the ultimate villain of the X-Men series, and probably the best villain in the Marvel Universe. Magneto, alias Eric Lenscher, is both a villain and an anti-hero. Starting with his tragic childhood and him trying to come to terms with his mutant powers, he stumbled onto Charles Xavier, and together they formed the core of what would later develop into the X-Men. However, Magneto was a too powerful and too complicated and angry person to stay with Charles Xavier, and so he broke loose, forming his own mutant supergroup. His power is controlling everything made of metal in any way it pleases him. His helmet is the key to his power, even though he was born with the ability to control things made of metal. But the helmet enabled him to channel and enhance his powers. He still remained fond of Charles or Professor X, but always disagreed with him about the approach that should be taken towards the mortal humans. While Professor X advocated peace and tolerance, Magneto believed in dominance over the mortals instead. Magneto is the coolest and baddest villain Marvel ever created. Venom is a symbiote, an alien who merged with a human host to become more powerful and inhabit the Earth. He quickly became one of Spider-Man's principal enemies, and perhaps the most formidable one as well. He sports the same web symbol as Spidey, but his body is all solid black, and physically a lot more formidable and larger. The most famous human Venom merged with was Eddie Brock, a disgraceful journalist who hated Spider-Man. It was therefore Venom became Spider-Man's mortal enemy, although at times he also is more of an anti-hero than a villain. But his monstrous shape and appearance make it difficult for anyone to view him as anything else than a supervillain. He also exhibits immunity to some of the superpowers of Spider-Man and Ghost Rider, who is another adversary of his. He is inhumanly strong and able to lift 50 tons. He also possesses the chameleon-like camouflage ability. It is for all these qualities that he makes my number 2 pick as the baddest and coolest Marvel villain ever. The word Juggernaut itself means unstoppable force, and that's just what this guy is. Gigantic, brutishly strong and unstoppable. Cain Marko is his original name, and he became the stepbrother of Charles Xavier when his father married Xavier's widowed mother. His father Kurt preferred Charles over him, and it turned Cain into a bitter man with a hatred for a future Professor X. They both served in the army in Korea, and it is there Cain came across a temple dedicated to Sitarak, a mystical entity. He found a large ruby which then granted him special powers and turned him into the Juggernaut. He later becomes an enemy of X-Men and is enlisted by Magneto to help him in his war against Xavier and X-Men. Juggernaut is probably as strong as the Hulk and is one of few who can match him in strength and who would stand a chance of defeating the Green Monster in combat. His helmet also makes him invulnerable to mental attacks from Xavier. He is able to create a force field which also gives him additional immunity. With all these qualities, Juggernaut is a true badass and is rightfully chosen as my number 3 Marvel. Loki is the trickster god and god of mischief. Originally the child of giants from Jotunheim, he was adopted as a baby by Odin and raised alongside his own son Thor. However, even as a child, Loki differed from his brother and liked to pull pranks on him. As both grew to manhood, Loki was envious of the fame Thor enjoyed as a giant slayer and the heir of Odin. He wanted the throne of Asgard for himself. To cut the long story short, he created a lot of trouble for Odin and Thor and Asgard. He later got his hands on the Tesseract, the magical item with unlimited powers. Avengers were forced to settle their differences in order to fight against him and the alien army he summoned to Earth. Loki had made a deal with Thanos in the meanwhile. In exchange for allowing his army to enter Earth, he was going to be installed as its supreme ruler. Loki's relationship with his brother Thor remained a love-hate one, constantly fighting and bickering and making up when Asgard was threatened by other forces. Thor still never hated him, and Loki also showed some kind of compassion for his adopted brother. Loki's powers lie mainly in illusion, as he is capable of creating a visual copy of himself, only to trick you into charging at the illusion and then stabbing you from behind. As such, he is an unpredictable opponent. Together with his spear, which is enhanced with the Tesseract, he is a formidable force, even though physically not that powerful for a god or an immortal being. Carnage is a supervillain of the same mold as Venom. He was created when the serial killer called Cletus Cassidy was merged with a symbiote alien Venom. Even though physically a lot smaller than the supervillain known as Venom, Carnage is just as powerful physically, if not even more powerful. Unlike Venom, Carnage is a singular entity and calls himself I instead of we. Because the symbiote actually emerged into Cassidy's bloodstream, which wasn't the case with Eddie Brock. He eventually grew to surpass even Venom in strength, being able to lift the astonishing 90 tons. He can also stick to walls and swing himself around in a similar manner to Spider-Man, and is faster and more mobile than Venom. He is invulnerable to certain fire weapons, but unlike Venom, he doesn't have the camouflaging ability. He is able to deaden Spider-Man's spider sense to a certain degree and block Venom's symbiote natural ability to track its offspring, and that makes him a truly badass villain. A giant robot created by Hank Pym, Tony Stark in the movie version, Ultron is the king of all robots, and the most evil and twisted robot that ever existed. Possessing a mind of his own, which is very uncharacteristical of robots of course, he broke free from his creator's control and built up his own little empire. He fought against Pym and the Avengers, and in the meantime created his own offspring called Vision. He endowed him with a jewel containing great powers. However, Vision soon turned against him and joined the Avengers, and Ultron was ultimately defeated and destroyed. As mentioned, Ultron is a gigantic robot standing around 8 feet tall, in the movie anyway, and has the ability to control other smaller robots and manifest a part of himself into them. He can also shoot rays from his hands and regenerate himself. A formidable villain indeed. Mastoni. Born as Brock Ramlow, Crossbones became a criminal at a young age, eventually becoming the disciple of supervillain Red Skull, and was given the new name of Crossbones by him. He became one of the world's greatest killers, working for Red Skull and leading his own crew called Skeleton Crew. He ultimately became a nemesis to Captain America and Daredevil. He even succeeded in killing Steve Rogers, the original Captain America, with a sniper shot. He was defeated by the new Captain America and thrown out of the window, but saved by Black Widow. Norman Osborn later enlisted his services. Originally, Crossbones didn't have any powers apart from being a big hulking and menacing brute, ready to kill anyone. Later, due to exposure from the radioactive mist known as terrigenesis, he gained the power to generate intense heat and fire it in beams at his enemies. He also possesses peak human strength, speed, and stamina. Daredevil once said Crossbones was difficult to predict in a fight due to his high metabolism. As an assassin, he is proficient with different weapons such as guns, crossbows, and throwing knife. Therefore, he is one badass. Ronan the Accuser is the principal villain in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe, or one of them anyway. He is a member of Kree aristocracy and a part of the Public Accuser Corps, which is like something akin to a military police, made to enforce law and order. He is also the nemesis of Black Bolt and his Inhumans. Ronan is of gigantic stature and wields a huge hammer called the Universal Weapon, which can fire blasts of energy, create energy fields, and it can also make him fly. He has superhuman strength, speed, and healing ability. He also wears a suit of cybernetic armor, which furthermore enhances and protects him. It contains scanners, a cloaking device, can generate electric charges, and allows the user to freeze targets. It also allows Ronan to fire a powerful blast from his eyes. He also wields a blaster as a sidearm. This all makes him a really formidable opponent. The principal and most powerful enemy of the Avengers, Thanos, is a Titan, born to the Eternals' mentor and Suisan. He soon became the most powerful Titan, and his skin developed in such a manner that he was able to not just absorb cosmic energy on an atomic level, but also manipulate it as a kinetic force. His brother Eros was more loved and was designated to replace their father as the ruler. Thanos therefore felt less loved and ostracized, which turned him into a villain. Eventually he adopted two girls from two different species, called Gamora and Nebula. He trained them in fighting and favored Gamora because she always beat Nebula, even though Nebula also was an accomplished fighter. Both of them would eventually turn against him because of the hatred they felt over how he treated them. Anyway, Thanos as a Titan is not just gigantic but humongous, and is probably the most powerful being in the entire Marvel universe. Need I say more? The son of a wealthy businessman, Norman Osborn was mistreated by his father in his childhood, and was once locked alone in one of their empty houses by his father in order to cure his fear of the dark. Once there, the young Norman developed a paranoid fear of a creature he envisioned to be a Green Goblin. It was this that then became his first villain alter ego, Green Goblin. After being defeated by Spider-Man, he then went into hiding and re-emerged under the guise of Iron Patriot, crime-fighting champion akin to Iron Man. However, he was still the same Norman Osborn under that iron suit. He was associated with Sinister Six and became the leader of the villainous supergroup Thunderbolts, which also included Juggernaut. Like Tony Stark, Norman Osborn is more of a brainy kind of force, a brainiac. Yet he didn't possess the same technical knowledge as Stark, and thus his Iron Patriot suit became inferior to that of the Iron Man suit, with a weaker laser beam. As Green Goblin, he gained enhanced superhuman strength due to the Green Goblin serum he created. He is still a brilliant and very shrewd villain whose intellect enabled him to form and control teams such as Dark Avengers, Dark X-Men, Thunderbolts, and Dark Illuminati.